Hey guys, I have an interesting video on Wild Rift. So you're finally back with the patch 4.2. I'm gonna call it rundown. I'm gonna change my review to rundown. I think that sounds a little bit better because review sort of sounds like you have a product and you're kind of gonna review it. But anyways, welcome to the patch 4.2 rundown. Now, this is sort of a day late from what I was expecting to make it, because turns out like about 5 or 6 days ago, Wild Rift delayed the patch by 1 day, but I simply did not notice the update on their patch schedule, so I thought it was going to release yesterday, only to realize it wasn't there, went to check and found out it was going to be a day later. Anyways, we finally got here, and as you guys can see from here, this is a huge patch. It is mainly targeted at ADCs, but there are huge system changes that are going to affect everybody, and we're going to go through all of them. This is going to be a long one because there's so many changes, and it's going to take quite a while to go through. First up, we have Swain. Swain's going to release when the patch releases. He's a battle mage that the main draw of Swain is sort of CC, as well as standing up close and personal and draining their health while doing the damage to them. It's a really interesting playstyle. We don't have a lot of battle mages in Wild Rift, so this is a welcome addition. But of course, as an ADC player, I'm not going to be playing Swain too much. Next up, we have a new dragon, being the Ice Dragon. Now this is really interesting because we used to only have 3 dragons, which basically meant that you saw the same 3 dragons in every single game. Now with a new dragon, it means that you will not have the same 3 dragons every single game. You could have a scenario where you don't have a mountain drake, don't have an infernal drake, one of those good, quote unquote good dragons, and you have an ice dragon instead. Now ice dragon isn't bad, it gives you ability haste, it's a pretty good stat, and the elemental rift for Ice Dragon is Icy Pathways, which is going to be similar to what the old Cloud Drake used to have, but Cloud Drake doesn't exist anymore, so this is kind of like Cloud Drake's elemental rift, sort of like changed a little bit, but it's more or less there. And you have a new plant called the Cryo Blossom. Basically what it does is it's a skill shot, so like, you know how when you walk near the blast plant, it's going to show you where you're going to blast to. Basically when you walk near this plant, it's going to have a skill shot indicator of where you're going to fire it to. When you hit someone, they're going to get frozen on the spot, which is equivalent to them like hitting a stasis. They can't move, they can't cast any spells, and that kind of deal. So basically it sort of can work for chasing down enemies, or like or to be used on enemies who are chasing you, sort of situation. Or you know, you can just whack it for fun when you see a high health enemy nearby, just to irritate them, something like that. It's pretty interesting and pretty welcome change. New dragon is always great. So next up we have the new wild pass with Soda Pop Ari being the new skin, and of course this being a new wild pass skin line of having I guess food instead of having like the superhero supervillain. And next up we have home screen and button customization. Basically you can change the splash art on your home screen, and the UI of like your auto attack button can be edited. And I'm not quite sure how you're gonna obtain this. They say from the collection system, but that's really vague. So yeah. And finally we have hex stack crafting. So hex stack crafting is gonna be a new way you can obtain skins and such, and these are going to be for like more exclusive or harder to obtain skins, or like past exclusive skins, like for example I forgot what that was called, but the one with like Set Cannon and Zed, the one that a lot of people like, but I forgot what the skin line was called, but like that one for example. And of course this requires opening like chests and such, which of course requires wild core, so it's kind of a really premium store. But if that's what you fancy, then it is there for you, which I think is a really good addition to the game, because it gives people, you know, more ways to spend their money, more ways for them to for the devs to get money, and also more exclusive skins. So it's sort of like a win-win situation. Of course, for the rest of the people, it's kind of not too nice because it's hard to obtain good skins, but hey, you know. And next up we have 2 events. First one is, I believe, like Swain's release event. Maybe you can get Swain for free, who knows. And second one is the Pride event that's coming on the start of June. So next up we have champion changes, and it at first looks like there's only 2 champion changes, but that's because all the rest of the champion changes are a marksman, and they have been hidden here. So first up we have Olaf. Now Olaf is getting a basically what's a mini rework. So he starts off with 10% less attack speed. However, on his passive, now instead of gaining a little bit of attack speed for every 1% missing health, which used to scale with your level. Now they're gaining 60 to 100% attack speed, as well as 10 to 25% physical vamp based on your missing health, which maxes out at 70 missing health. Now, maxing out at 70 missing health is actually pretty huge, because last time it used to max out at literally like 1% missing health, 1%. So obviously, or rather not 1%, 99% missing health, which sort of was pointless because you don't want to be sitting at like 5% HP to get max effects. So this being now down, changed to 70% is actually pretty huge. So of course the attack speed is technically speaking the same. Like, this is just translated from 0.6 to 1, and it's translated to 60 to 100. It's basically the same. The main change is this one. And also, the physical vamp is transferred from his W to his passive, which is, I mean, it's a change. So yeah, his W now instead, its cooldown is getting a scaling cooldown. Bonus attack speed is going down. And attack speed time is also going down. So these are sort of like a bunch of nerfs to his W. However, of course, you no longer gain the physical vamp and healing boost because it's on your passive. However, you now gain a shield, which is like 30, which scales from 30 to 120, and it scales off your lost health, which also maxes out at 70%, and your shield lasts for 2.5 seconds. So having that shield is actually pretty huge, because this is a pretty huge shield. 120 shield plus 70.5 lost health it's pretty huge. So this could be a game changer. Like, when you're all in, you pop the vicious strikes with the attack speed and the shield, and this could negate a lot of damage. And this indirectly, I think, is a buff despite getting less attack speed and less attack speed duration, because you're getting a huge shield instead. Next up, you got your Reckless Swing, which is your E, the one that does true damage. Does more damage to monsters, basically makes it easier for him to clear. Finally, you have his ulti. So your resistance increase, which is basically increasing your armor and your magic resist, is basically getting reduced by 10 at all ranks. However, your resistances are no longer removed when you cast your active, which is pretty huge, because casting your ultimate used to make him pretty squishy, and now that no longer is the case. So attack speed boost again, attack boost, not attack speed boost, is going down by a scaling amount. So it's going down by a huge amount in the early game, but less so in the late game. It also has lesser scaling, so you're gonna get a little bit less. I think this is a D on it, and its duration is getting cut in half. However, releasing 3 skills and basic attacks on enemy champions can extend the duration to 2.5 seconds. Now, the way I interpreted this is pretty unclear, because I think the way this works is the same as what they did for him in LoL PC, which is basically when you use your skills and your basic attacks on enemy champions, your ultimate can sort of go infinitely, as it increases by 2.5 seconds, then increases by 2.5 seconds, then increases by 2.5 seconds, but the phrasing on this doesn't seem to imply that. So it's either I'm wrong and it's different from LoL PC, or it is the same as LoL PC, but the phrasing here is just horrible. So I'm gonna for now interpret it as it's the same as LoL PC. So it's basically an infinite duration ultimate so long as you're attacking somebody, which I think is a change. It basically is overall a win, because if you're attacking people, you can keep your ultimate active, which should be the case anyway when you're popping your ult. But if you're popping your ult to like run away, or your ult gets forced by like a certain CC that you have to immune, then it sort of hurts a lot more. Renekton is now getting a shield breaker on his W, which is the same as what he got on PC. It's pretty interesting, because N-Step once mentioned that there really wasn't a point of adding shield breakers in the game. And there are a couple of other shield breaker skills, but it's interesting that Renekton is the only one that got shield breaker. Now this basically immediately makes Renekton more powerful, because he counters a lot of champions. For example, Set. Like, if Set pops his W, Renekton just uses his shield breaker on him. He doesn't have a shield anymore. And also it's kind of a counter to Gargoyle's Stoneplate. So Gargoyle's Stoneplate also indirectly getting weaker if there's a Renekton on the enemy team. So now we're going to move on to the marksman changes. There are a ton of them, but first up, before I want to talk about that, I want to talk about the all champions adjustments. So all champions are getting a base movement speed addition of 10, and the crit rate of crit damage, sorry, not crit rate, crit damage is going down by 25% on all champions. So these two changes connect to two other things. The first one is the fact that boots are no longer getting an active. So you no longer have that boots active, and this is meant. This is sorry, I'm highlighting the wrong part. It's this. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. So they remove the active skill of the boot, so you no longer have that sprint ability. Instead, you're getting extra 5 movement speed on your boots, and you're also getting extra 10% base movement speed. So overall, you're getting more base movement speed, and you're not getting the active. In my opinion, I like this change because having more base movement speed is always going to be useful. However, this severely discourages you from getting tier 1 and tier 2 boots. Tier 3 boots are now going to be so much better because you don't have that sprint ability from tier 1 and tier 2 boots, which is sort of their goal. They want you to have more of an incentive to purchase your upgraded boots earlier, which of course means the tier 3 boots. So that's an interesting change to say the least. But yeah, so next up, all champions crit damage going down in compensation to all marksmen. Now this is obviously going to affect marksmen the most because marksmen are the one that mainly builds crit. Now in compensation, a lot of marksman champions are getting triple buffs. So first up, it's a buff to attack range. They're gaining 25 attack range. Now all marksmen that get buffed on their range all gained 25 range. I checked and it all is all 25. The base attack speed for a lot of marksmen is getting increased by 10%. And a lot of them are getting an increase for attack damage, attack speed per level as well, 1%. And a lot of them are getting increased attack damage per level, but this one is different for all of them. So here, Caitlyn, you can see went from 3.6 to 4, whereas somebody like a Draven has the same change actually. Whereas Lucian has 2.65 to 3, so mainly they're getting about 0.4 extra. So you could call the standard changes 25% range increase, 10% attack speed increase, and 1% attack speed per level increase. Now, I think I know where they're trying to go with this. My theory on why they did this change is that, number one, this makes marksmen stronger in the early game. You have 10% increase base attack speed from 20 to 30. Now that's pretty huge. So in lane, ADCs are gonna attack faster. Overall, their attack speed growth is gonna be faster as well. So why faster attack speed growth? Well, my theory is that they want crit items to only be built on Yasuo, Yone, Tryndamere, and ADCs. So if you build like a crit on like a Rengar or like Jarvan, for example, now crit junglers are kind of getting a little bit more common, like the crit jungle, the crit Renekton, the crit Rengar, which has always been popular. You're gonna get a lot less value because you're only gonna get 175% crit damage instead of 200. Now, ADCs have the same nerf in the sense that they also have 175 crit damage now, but the change to their base attack speed, the change to the way their attack speed scales, and the way that they change how their attack damage scales, I believe this is meant to make it such that they do similar damage in the late game when they have a couple of crit items, whereas other non-ADCs will deal less damage when they build crit items. I believe that this is what happens with this change. Now, of course, I did not do the math. The math is incredibly complicated to calculate crit with attack speed and attack damage and that sort of deal. I don't know how to even calculate that, but my theory is that that is what they're trying to do. So now, aside from the standard changes of getting increased attack range, base attack speed, and attack speed per level, as well as attack damage per level, we're going to cover the other changes now. Also, just a small side note, every ADC has an increase of 25 attack range, and I guess this just basically makes ADC as a role stronger in general, because of course having more range makes it easier to attack people like other champions who are non-ADCs, because they don't have a range increase. So this is an overall buff to the ADC role. So Akshan, on his heroic swing skill 3, the critical strike is going down, and the critical strike with Infinity Edge is also going down. Now this is pretty strange, because I mean Akshan is sort of a pseudo ADC, but he is getting kind of a nerf here, So this is pretty interesting. Basically, it's just gonna make him slightly weaker. Caitlyn is now getting the auto cast, smart cast, sorry, not auto cast, smart cast, where if you smart cast it, it will automatically cast spells to the nearest enemy. Personally, I don't quite like this. Now I know what this is trying to achieve. Basically, when like you're running or chasing, for example, it's really hard to target that small little trap exactly where you want it to be. However, I don't like it because I like it to cast at my feet. I've gotten used to casting where the enemy is, and I've gotten used to tapping to cast it at my feet. Now, if I want to cast it at my feet, it's going to be hard to aim, and sometimes when you're running, you just want to cast it at your feet in a choke point where the enemy is going to have to run after you. So I don't quite like this change personally, but I can see where they're going with it. Now, Corki attack range increase. Now, Graves is basically getting a slight nerf such that he's doing 10% less damage on his critical strikes. Yeah. Draven getting the standard buffs, Ezreal range increase, Jinx range increase. Sorry, not Jinx, Jhin range increase. He's also getting range increase on abilities like his Q. So you will notice that they do increase the range of abilities that are meant to be the same as your auto attacks, same as like Tristana. We'll talk about it later. But Jin's getting a pretty huge buff. Now, aside from getting the same trap treatment as Caitlyn on his captive audience, Jinx also has that same trap treatment. He's, instead of having level times 3%, he's getting level times 5%, which is a pretty huge buff in terms of the AD that you get on Jhin. So this hopefully is enough to push Jhin back into the meta together with the other item changes, and hopefully Jhin is going to be a lot better now. So next up, Jinx getting the same treatment as everybody else. Instead, now she's getting a nerf to the range on her rockets, which is sort of in compensation to her range increase here. Makes sense. Kai'Sa getting the standard changes, but getting a huge change in terms of skill evolution. Now, instead of having to reach X amount of AP, AD, as well as attack speed, now every time you buy an advanced equipment, which is basically a tier 3 item like a Storm Razor or an IE, for example, you get a skill upgrade, which is huge. This is a huge buff to Kai'Sa because you don't have to go for all those weird like double BF sword start builds anymore. You can just build normally as a normal marksman, and this is a huge, like, this is just a huge change. There's not too much to say about it. It's a huge change. So we're of course going to be testing her out and, you know, talking about it, same as every other marksman. And next up we have Lucian, basically the standard changes. Miss Fortune and Samira also the standard changes. Senna getting a pretty interesting change. So crit damage reduction goes from 50% to 25%. So this is a buff because she used to have 50% crit damage reduction, in a sense that her crits do 50% damage. Now it does 75% damage because it's only a 25% reduction now. So this is a buff to Senna. Also getting a range increase on her Q, of course. So this is a pretty huge buff to Senna. Senna might become really strong after this. Tristana standard changes, also getting the range increase on her E and her ult, which of course is supposed to be scale with her attack range, so it makes sense. Tryndamere also getting the standard changes, which is why I sort of postulated that they wanted no one else to build crit aside from the 3 ADCs, the Wind Twins, and Tryndamere. Twitch standard changes. He's getting his ult range nerfed in compensation, same deal as like the Jinx rockets. Vera standard changes. Vayne, Condemn can now no longer deals bonus wall damage with IE and always deals a fixed amount of damage, but scales with bonus AD. Honestly, I didn't even know that it used to scale with IE, but and I play Vayne a lot, so yeah, I'm not quite sure how big the impact of this is, but yeah, I don't really think this is gonna matter too much. Xayah standard changes. Yasuo and Yone attack speed changes, and Zeri standard changes. So wow, that's a whole lot to get through. But now we're finally going to move on to talking about items. And I don't even think we're halfway through at this point, but there's still a ton more changes. So first up, Immortal Shield Bow. So Immortal Shield Bow costs 3,200. For comparison, Storm Razor is 3,100. So it gives you almost the same stats as Stormraiser: 40 AD, 25% crit, 5 physical vamp, as well as 15% attack speed. Now, for comparison, Stormraiser doesn't give you the physical vamp, but you get extra 5% attack speed. Now, this basically makes it such that Immortal Shield Bow, because of its passive, Lifeline, damage that puts you under 35% health, produces a shield that absorbs 200 plus 50 damage per 10% critical strike that lasts for 5 seconds. So per 10% critical strike means this can stack up to 10 times. Basically means this could be 500. So this could be a 700 shield. And Triggering Lifeline provides 10% physical vamp for 8 seconds. Now this is superior to Stormraiser for any champion that takes damage. So basically think of it like, for example, on Lucian, Samira, a lot of like ADCs would prefer to take Shield Bow over Stormraiser. Now, this begs the question of, will anybody still build Stormraiser? In my opinion, this is going to be determined by 2 factors. Number 1, how OP is Immortal Shield Bow? If the shield is so OP and is so huge, it could be a case where everybody builds Immortal Shield Bow. The other possibility is that if Immortal Shield Bow is not OP, if it's balanced, then certain champions who are not looking to take damage, like for example Jinx or Caitlyn, who are the kind that plays front to back and never really gets close to enemies, might still go for Stormraiser. Or they might go for Shield Bow in matches where they're assassins. For example, if there's an enemy Zed, enemy Wukong on the enemy team, you might still want to go for Shield Bow for the survivability, because you're not losing out on that much by losing out on Stormraiser's 5% attack speed and the passive, because Stormraiser sort of doesn't scale very well into the game, but Shield Bow does. Well, at least better than Stormraiser. So this could be a possible new like OP core item on every ADC. Next up, Essence Reaver. So Essence Reaver is it got a pretty interesting change. So it still has like the same stat line. It's now a lot cheaper. And now after you attack a champion, your next damaging ability or empowered attack is going to do increased damage up to 30% based on your critical strike chance. As a 6-second cooldown, but basic attacks will reduce this cooldown, and you still got the same mana siphon passive. This is pretty interesting, because while the old Stormraiser did also scale the crit, it's mainly built as a first item. Now I think that this is still a first item kind of deal, because it gives you good stats and it's a relatively good price, cheaper than Stormraiser and Shield Bow. But it also still scales with skills in a sense that it makes you deal more damage. So I'm thinking not many people are gonna build this. Only like spellcasters like Lucian, for example, might look to build this. And since it didn't get the spell blade, I don't think Ezreal will be building this. I think like maybe Lucian, maybe Xayah. I don't see a lot of champions building this. It's really a niche item, and it's supposed to be. So Infinity Edge, of course, basically it's the same. It's just the numbers are just getting adjusted in conjunction with the crit changes. So next up is Mirror Mana. So Mirror Mana basically is getting a passive rework where it basically now works on skills in addition to basic attacks. Basically, this is a huge buff to the item, makes it such that assassins like Kayn, for example, can build this item, and it's a huge buff to champions like Varus and Jace, who is now going to deal more damage with this item with their abilities. And next up, Nashor's Tooth. Nashor's Talent is a new component item costing 800, gives you AD or AP adaptive. So now Nashor's Tooth is now a new adaptive item. It gives you 45% attack speed, 20 ability haste. I believe this is the same, but now you can gain either 30 AD or 60 AP. So this basically makes it such that ADCs or like any kind of attack damage champions can build this item. Now, I think this is a pretty amazing change, because it doesn't really affect, it just makes it such that more people can build this item. Almost like no one builds this item, like maybe Gwen, AP Varus maybe, but not a lot of people build this item. This makes it such that more champions are able to build this item, but even so, it doesn't mean that they will. Like, a lot of marksmen are still going to go full crit. They're not necessarily going to build this, but giving them the option to build this is pretty good. So it has on hit. So when basic attacks hits enemy champions, it will cause basically bonus damage plus which scales with both AD and AP. Now, what kind of damage is this? This is the thing. This used to be magic damage, but what kind of damage is this? It's not true damage. It's either physical or magic. So I'm not sure what this is gonna be. Maybe it's based on what you're getting. Like maybe it's adaptive. So we're gonna have to see. Noon Quiver, new component item. Long sword plus 700 gold, basically costs 1200 total. Gives you a little bit of AD and a little bit of attack speed. So now, where's the Storm Razor changes? Alright, so I'm gonna talk about Storm Razor changes first. So Storm Razor is gonna recipe change. So now it's instead of BF Sword and Kirkai's Shard, it's gonna be Noon Quiver, Longsword, Brawler's Gloves, and Gold. Now I think that this ultimately is a nerf, because I think having BF Sword in your recipe is huge, because BF Sword gives you so much AD, which is more important than attack speed. However, this allows you to build Noon Quiver both into Storm Razor as well as Immortal Shield, which I think is their kind of goal with doing this, in a sense that you do have the free choice of knowing, not knowing, but deciding which one you want later on if you start off with a Noon Quiver. I think that that's a really pointless change though, and another change they wanted is you can get more components with less gold. So because it's 1200, 1200 instead of 1500, it's 300 gold cheaper, so it's easier to get. I get the logic in that, but Noon Quiver I don't think is as good of an item as BF Sword in terms of the build recipe. Phantom Dancer, another new item rework, costs 2900, which is a pretty affordable item for a crit item. Gives you 25 AD, so just a little bit of AD. Same crit and 30% attack speed, but you also get 5% movement speed, and every time you basic attack you get an extra 7% movement speed. This is pretty huge for a lot of marksmen, because 7% movement speed, sorry, not per attack, but when you attack for 3 seconds. You can also stack this 4 times. So I believe you stack it 4 times. I'm not sure if the movement speed stacks or that you can just gain 4 stacks for this, but yeah. So you gain additional 30% attack speed. So this item gives a total of 60% attack speed. Now that's huge. The most attack speed you can get from one item comes from like Wit's End or Nash's Tooth, where you get 45%. This one gives 60%, so that's pretty huge in terms of attack speed. So I'm immediately thinking champions like Vayne, champions like anyone who wants to attack me, but mainly champions like Vayne, for example. So other champions that want to build this, maybe like Kaisa, sort of that kind of deal. We'll have to see later when we talk about builds for champions, like not in this video but in a different video. However, since it only gives 25 AD, this is normally like second item. It's not really first item because you don't get enough AD. So rapid fire cannon, getting the range change basically in conjunction once again with the range changes on marksman. And another new item, collector. So collector, 2900 gold, built out of Dirk, cloak, as well as an extra 900 gold. Gives 40 AD, 25% crit rate, and 10 armor penetration. And when an enemy goes below 5% of their max health, you get an execute, and you get extra 25 gold. Now this patch note seems to have a lot of missing words, like champion kills grant an additional 25. Like, where's the gold? But anyway, so this is an item that probably in terms of marksman only Jin, Samira, and Miss Fortune might build. I think this is more of an assassin item than a marksman item. Main difference of this item from other items is you get the crit. The funny thing is, honestly, this item, the item passive doesn't even matter that much. Like, it's very visual, it's very satisfying, but this is not the reason the item is good. The reason the item is good is that it is an item that gives both armor pen as well as crit, which is the main reason the item is good. But not many people can make use of this item, which is kind of why the item is bad. So anyways, talking about the runes, we got Transcendence replacing Hunter Genius. Basically, now instead of having to stack it on enemies, you gain 6 skill haste at level 1, level 6 you gain another 6, and at level 11, when you basic attack targets, cooldown of your skills are reduced by 15%, 8-second cooldown. So this is basically a better version of Hunter Genius, because you don't have to stack the Hunter rune. You get fixed skill haste, doesn't work in your ultimate anymore though, and when you basic attack targets, you get basically a Navori style passive where you will reduce the cooldown of your skills, and I think this is overall going to be more useful for a lot more champions. And Hunter Titan is also being removed, so you don't have to stack it anymore. You're getting Perseverance instead, which instantly gives you 10% tenacity, and when you get CC, you get an additional amount of armor and magic resist. And the refresh duration is the duration is refreshed when you're immobilized multiple times. So this sounds like a tank focused rune, to be honest. I don't think carries are going to be taking this rune because you don't want to get immobilized multiple times in a row. But even so, 10% tenacity and getting increased resistances when you get immobilized can be useful in certain team comps. So this could be a carry rune as well. So system changes. So when you recall, basically after 5 seconds, your mana, energy / health recovery is going to be double. Walking back to base does not grant this effect. So this basically means that even when you're near the base, you might want to recall. You can get out of base faster. So now we're gonna go into this huge amount of objective changes. Now this is really huge. So first up, Baron is getting lesser base health, lesser base damage, but it's getting better scaling. Spawns at 12 instead of 13 minutes now. And your Baron buff lasts for 20 less seconds. And this is the what I thought was going to be a huge one. Your Baron buff no longer disappears after you're killed, but will no longer strengthen nearby minions upon respawn. So basically, when you die, you still have Baron buff. It doesn't buff the minions anymore, which is the main point of Baron buff. But you still get the increased stats. You still get the special recall. So it basically they want to make game time faster. So I guess that does make game time faster. You get more stats. You get a faster recall. So it does make it easier. But you don't have the most important components. So you still get punished for dying, which I think is a good change overall. Baron buff lasting for a lower duration, and spawn timer being early is pretty interesting because it means that you're fighting for Baron earlier. You're of course having lesser duration of Baron, so it matters more how you use your Baron, which I don't know how that's gonna reduce game time, but yeah. So elemental dragon. So now the respawn interval is going to go from 5 minutes to 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I'm not sure if the first spawn is also going to be 4 minutes 30 seconds or 5 minutes, but the Elder Dragon is now going to spawn 2 minutes earlier as well. So the despawn is now going to go to 17:30 on the normal dragons. So this is of course absolutely fine change. Basically once again increases the pace of the game. Dragons also spawn with less health but have better health per level. And yeah, it's honestly, I think these two changes basically just increase the pace of the game, like long story short. Now, this is basically just showing how the bounty system works. First Blood gets another 50 gold, and I think that this is honestly roughly the same as what we have now. So, of course, once again, when you get to like 8 consecutive kills, when you get Legendary, you get a 1k bounty. Oh yeah, the one other thing is that your basic bounty is kind of going down, in a sense that instead of 350 gold per kills, you're only going to get 300 gold per kill. And overall, you're just getting a lot less gold from kills in general, which is pretty strange. So yeah, you can only get up to 1k gold, and then your bounty carries over, and the most you can get is like 11. So if you get more than 11 kills, you no longer have increasing bounty, which yeah. So now this is a really weird change. Your ranged minion is your ranged minions range is going up from 375 to 525, and your cannon minions range is going from 525 to 300. This is indirectly just a swap in terms of like range. So this is gonna be a really weird, because what your wave is gonna look like now is your cannon is gonna be up in front, like near your melee minions, and your ranged minions are gonna be way back. Which is really, really strange to me, like where the cannon minion used to be. This is really, really strange to me. I'm not quite sure what the goal of this change is. Like, this will make cannon minions easier to kill because they're gonna get focused by melee minions, and that means that it's harder to push because you don't have your cannon minion. So I'm not quite sure what they're trying to do here. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. So Nexus Shield. When you destroy the first inhibitor turret, your Nexus gets a shield which scales off your Nexus's health. So basically, this is a pretty huge change, because what this means is that if you have a huge teamfight win and you're pushing down multiple towers, you're going for the end, the Nexus is going to get a huge shield. So most of the time, you're going to have to either, number one, break the inhibitor, come back on another time, or if it's late in the game, you have to break the inhibitor. Maybe respawn timers are long enough, you have to break through the shield and then go for the actual Nexus. So either way, this is a pretty huge change. So pacing adjustments, playing now lasts 30 seconds longer, smite debuff lasts 30 seconds longer, the evolved buffs spawn 30 seconds later, and minion respawn interval changing by 5 seconds or so. So respawn time roughly the same. You guys can take a look at the changes for yourself. Minions now give slightly less gold. So melee minion 5 less, cannon minion 5 less, cannon minion slightly less XP, and yeah. So I don't know what. Basically all these are just balancing changes. Like you reduce kill goal a bit, you reduce minion goal a bit, but Elder Dragon spawns sooner, Baron spawns sooner, Drake spawns sooner. All that stuff deals. Just a lot of game balancing basically. Rift Herald. This is and I say this a lot, but this is another pretty huge change because basically Rift Herald. Is there's only going to be one Rift Herald. The main like important change here is like there's only going to be one Rift Herald, and Rift Herald deals more damage. So instead of dealing 150 damage, it's going to deal 2000 damage. So there's no second Rift Herald. So after you get first Rift Herald, that's it. And Herald despawn is of course changing to match Baron. And yeah, all these changes I think are not important. So next up. This is your tier 2, inner defense is your tier 2 tower. Less health, less armor, less magic resist, and now they're adding this new thing. Where every 30 seconds you stay there, you're dealing extra damage. But honestly, who's gonna stay there whacking a tower for like 30 seconds or 1 minute? I am not sure. But yeah, so I don't think this is very important. And attack armor penetration, you're gonna deal more damage when you have armor penetration basically. And basically the inhibitor turret, the high ground defense tower I think is the inhibitor turret, and the Nexus is more or less getting the same treatment. Yeah, it's more or less just getting the same treatment that with more armor penetration, you're gonna deal more damage. You're getting the increased damage every 30 seconds deal, and you're getting the lesser health kind of deal. So yeah, more system changes. So you're getting a bunch of new skins. Darkstar Malphite, which is of course the mission reward, Tyrant Swain, Swain's release skin, Iconic Garen, the first Hextech store skin, the Sentinel skins, more Sentinel skins I guess you could say, because we already got some Sentinel skins, accessories, and that's pretty much it. Now that was a huge one. So if you guys stayed with me all this way through all the explanation, thank you guys so much for watching the video. I'll see you guys in a new video where I'm going to be going through marksman builds. So look out for that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye.